Rain comes against the tall windows of courtroom 4B in long slanting sheets, and the radiators have not worked since November, so the whole room smells of wet wool and old paper. It is 10:14 on a Tuesday morning in the second week of March. On the east wall there is a clock with a brass rim and a slow second hand, and beneath it, set into the marble like a thing nobody reads any more, 4 letters have been carved by a stone-cutter who has been dead for 60 years. Hollis. The boy sits alone at the long table on the left. He is 16 years old. He wears a gray coat 2 sizes too large, with the cuffs turned back once because there is nowhere else for his hands to go, and the coat is buttoned to the throat, because he is cold, and because it is the only thing he owns that looks like it was meant for a room like this. His shoes are clean. He cleaned them himself last night with a wet cloth and a corner of newspaper in the bathroom of the home on the ground floor, because his caseworker told him that the judge would notice his shoes. The judge does not notice his shoes. The judge notices the coat. "Let me understand the picture here," Judge Harlan Vance says, leaning back in his chair until the leather sighs. He is a heavy man with a careful haircut and reading glasses he uses mostly to look over the top of. He holds up a single sheet of paper between 2 fingers, the way a man holds something he intends to drop. The county has done its due diligence. The building is in arrears. The supposed owner is deceased, with no heirs of record. And the only objection on my docket this morning comes from— He lets the glasses fall to the chain around his neck. A minor, a ward of the state, wearing, if I am not mistaken, somebody else's coat. A low sound moves through the gallery. Not laughter. The thing that comes just before it. At the far table, in a charcoal suit that fits him the way money fits a man who has never worn anything cheap, Garrison Whitlock allows himself the smallest smile and does not look up from his folder. His watch catches the gray light. His shoes are Italian and have never once been touched by the weather outside. "I'm told you wanted to address the court, son." Judge Vance says the word son the way other men say boy. "Go on, then. I have a calendar. Tell me why a child thinks he knows better than the county assessor, the recorder of deeds, and the development authority. Tell me what claim a foster kid imagines he has on a 9-story building in the middle of this city." The boy stands. He does not hurry. He does not look at the gallery, or at Whitlock, or at the caseworker 2 rows back who is mouthing "say something." He looks at the judge, and he keeps his hands at his sides, and the room waits for him to stammer or to cry or to beg, because that is what the room has decided this morning will be. He says, "His name was Walter, that is all." "I beg your pardon? You said no heirs of record." The boy's voice is even and quieter than the rain. "I'm just telling you. His name was Walter. He wasn't the supposed owner. He was a person, and he asked me to come." Judge Vance laughs then, openly, and the gallery, given permission, laughs with him. The sound fills the cold room, and the boy stands inside it without moving, the way a fence post stands in a flood. "He asked you to come," the judge repeats, wiping the corner of his eye. "Well, we are all very moved. Sit down, son, before you embarrass yourself further. The court will—" At the back of the room, the heavy oak door opens. A woman comes in out of the rain. She is perhaps 60, in a navy coat dark across the shoulders with water, carrying a leather case in one hand and folding a wet umbrella with the other, and she is not hurrying either, but there is something in the set of her jaw that makes the bailiff straighten, without quite knowing why. She stops 3 steps inside the door. She looks at the boy standing alone at the table. She looks at the carved name on the wall above the judge's head. And her face, when it changes, does not change toward anger. It changes toward recognition. "Your Honor," she says, and her voice carries all the way to the bench without her seeming to raise it at all. "Before you rule, I'd ask the court to note my appearance. My name is Margaret Shaw. I'm counsel and sole trustee of the Walter J. Hollis Revocable Living Trust. She sets her case on the empty table beside the boy, and she rests one hand lightly on his shoulder, and she looks up at the judge with the patience of a woman who has waited a long time for this exact morning. And I think there has been a very serious misunderstanding about who owns this building. The clock on the east wall reads 10:14. In 8 minutes it will read 10:22, and everything in this room will have turned over like soil. But before any of that, before the deed, before the cornerstone, before a powerful man's face goes the color of the rain, you have to understand how a 16-year-old in a borrowed coat came to be standing in that room at all. You have to understand the old man. Before we go back, let me ask you something. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from today. The city, the town, the kitchen table, the late shift. I read them. And if you have ever once been measured by the coat you were wearing instead of the person inside it, subscribe and stay with me, because the story you're about to hear was built for you. It's about a boy nobody bothered to look at twice, and an old man the whole world had already forgotten, and the 8 minutes it took for a courtroom full of important people to learn that the quietest person in the room was holding the deed to the floor under their feet. We'll get to those 8 minutes. I promise you we will. But the 8 minutes don't mean anything until you've met Walter. So let's go back 2 years to a cold corner store on the ground floor of a building most people in the city had stopped noticing at all. The Hollis building stands 9 stories tall at the corner of Vance Street and 3rd, which is a coincidence the boy will think about later and the judge never will. It is the oldest building on the block and the only one that has not been sold, refaced, or torn down. The brick is the color of dried blood. The lobby has a mosaic floor with a compass rose in the center, most of the tiles still there, and a brass mailbox bank that has not received a letter in years, and a front door of iron and glass that takes a particular key and a particular shoulder to open in cold weather. For most of the boy's life, he did not know it existed. Then, at 14, he was placed at Marigold House. Marigold House occupies the ground floor and the basement of the Hollis building, a long-term placement home for foster youth, 8 beds, run on a county contract, and a great deal of personal will by a woman named Della Okafor, whom everyone calls Miss Della. The county rents the rooms cheap because the building is old, and the landlord, whoever the landlord is, has never once raised the rent in living memory. Miss Della has been there 19 years. She has a way of putting a plate in front of a child without a word and waiting, and most children eat. The boy's name is Eli Mercer. He came to Marigold House the way most of them come, quietly, with a garbage bag and a face that had learned not to hope out loud. His mother is alive somewhere and not coming. His father is a name on a document. By the time he was 14, he had been in 5 placements, and he had learned the single most useful thing a foster kid can learn, which is how to take up no space at all. He learned it at the 3rd placement, a house in the county where there were too many kids and not enough of anything, and a man who watched television in the front room and grew quieter the louder the house got, which Eli came to understand was the dangerous kind of quiet. There was a boy there, older, who took up a great deal of space, who argued, who slammed doors, who demanded to be seen, and Eli watched what happened to that boy, watched him moved on inside a month with a duffel bag and a look on his face, and Eli drew the lesson that the system teaches every child it touches whether it means to or not. The ones who ask for things get moved. The ones who need things get moved. The safe thing, the only thing, is to need nothing where anyone can see you need it. So he folded himself smaller. He learned to read a room the way other children learn to read a book, fast and from the corners. By 14, he could walk into any house in the county and tell you inside an hour who held the power and how it would be used, and he had stopped expecting any of it to be used on him. Eli takes up no space. He does his homework. He fixes things. The latch on the back door, the wobble in the kitchen table, The radiator valve that Miss Della had been told would cost $200 to repair, and that Eli repaired with a wrench and 40 minutes and a video he watched on the library computer. He listens. He is the kind of boy adults forget is in the room, and he has decided that this is the safest thing a person can be. And every afternoon, after school, before chores, he climbs the back stairs of the Hollis building to the 9th floor, and he knocks twice on the only occupied apartment on it, and an old man's voice says, "It's open. It's always open. Why do you knock?" And Eli goes in. The old man is Walter Hollis. The first time they met was an accident. Eli had gone up to the roof access to get a cat that one of the younger kids swore was stuck up there. There was no cat, and on the way down he heard, through a half-open door, the particular ugly sound of an old man falling, and the silence after it that is worse than the fall. Walter had gone down between the kitchen and the hall, caught his hip on the corner of a table, and could not get up, and had been on the floor for the better part of an hour, too proud to call out and too stubborn to be afraid. Eli got him up, got him into the chair, made him tea because there was a kettle and the man's hands were shaking and it seemed like the thing to do, and Walter Hollis watched this gray, silent boy move around his kitchen as though he had done it 100 times and said finally, "You don't talk much." "No, sir." "Good," said Walter. "Neither do I. Come back tomorrow. The tea is terrible. You'll do it better." That was the beginning. If you have ever been the one nobody looked at twice, the kid in the back, the one in the wrong coat, type "never judge" in the comments. Walter Hollis would have wanted you to. He spent 40 years being looked at twice, and the second look was always worse than the first. Because here's a thing about Walter Hollis that the judge did not know and the developer did not care to learn. Walter was not a poor man. Walter was, by any honest accounting, a rich one. Land rich, building rich, the last of a family that had owned half of 3 blocks before the war and sold most of it and kept this. But Walter dressed in the same brown cardigan with the hole at the elbow for as long as Eli knew him. He ate canned soup and good bread. He had let the whole world believe for 30 years that the Hollis building was a relic owned by a ghost, because once a man learns that money brings only the kind of people who want it, he learns to stop showing it. He had a son once, a boy who would have been about Eli's age in a photograph that sat face down in a drawer because Walter could not look at it and could not throw it away. The son and the wife both, in one bad winter, a long time ago. Walter did not speak of it. He spoke of chess and of buildings, and of the city the way it used to be, and of tea, always the tea. "You steep it too long," he would say. "You're afraid of doing it wrong, so you wait, and waiting ruins it. Pull it sooner. Trust your hand." "Yes, sir." "Stop calling me sir. I'm not your teacher." "What are you then?" Walter would think about that a long time. "I'm the man on the 9th floor," he'd say. "Whose tea you fix?" For nearly 2 years, that is what they were. 6 days a week. The boy came up the back stairs at 4 and left at 5:30 to do his chores, and in between an old man and a foster kid sat at a chessboard by a window 9 stories above a city that had forgotten them both, and neither one said very much, and it was, for each of them, the warmest hour of the day. Walter taught him chess. Eli was bad at it for a long time and then, all at once, was not. Walter taught him to look at the whole board and not just the piece in front of him. "Everyone watches the queen," he said. "The game is won by the pieces nobody's watching." He tapped a pawn. "This one. They forget about this one. And then it's on the back rank and it's a queen and the whole board belongs to it. And the man across from you never saw it coming because he decided early on that it didn't matter." He looked at Eli over the board. "You understand me." "It's a pawn," Eli said. "It was," said Walter. There was a way Walter played that Eli came to recognize and, in time, to love. The old man never reached for the dramatic move, never took a piece just because he could. He would sit with his hands folded and let Eli make the loud, hopeful beginner's attacks, and he would give ground and give ground, looking for all the world like a man losing. And Eli would feel the flush of a boy who is winning, right up until the moment 3 or 4 moves later when the board would close around him like a hand, and he would understand that Walter had not been losing at all. Walter had been waiting. "You let me think I was winning," Eli said once after one of these. "I let you tell me everything about how you think," Walter said, resetting the pieces. "Which is the same thing, and more useful. A loud man tells you his whole strategy by move 6. You just have to be still enough to let him." He set the last pawn in its place. Most people can't be still. They itch to act. They confuse moving with winning. He looked up. "You can be still. I noticed it the first day. You stood in my kitchen and you didn't fill the silence. Do you know how rare that is in a person? I've known men of 70 who never learned it." He gestured at the board. "Your move. Don't rush it. Nobody's timing you up here." Nobody was. That was the gift of the 9th floor, that for 1 hour a day in a city that timed everyone, nobody was timing the boy. He could take as long as he wanted. He could be wrong and try again. He could be a child, which is a thing the system had never quite let him be. There were 3 things Walter gave the boy over those 2 years, and Eli did not understand the weight of any of them at the time. The first was a key, a heavy brass key, old, with a square head, on a leather thong. Walter pressed it into the boy's hand one cold afternoon near the end of the first year. "The front door," he said. "The iron one. It sticks in the cold. You have to lift it on the hinge and put your shoulder to it. Everybody else uses the side door. You're not everybody else. You come in the front." Eli wore it around his neck under his shirt after that, because a foster kid learns to keep the things that matter where no one can take them. The second was a watch. A pocket watch, gold gone soft with handling, with a worn engraving on the back that the boy could no longer read. Walter gave it to him on a Tuesday with no occasion at all, the way he gave everything, as though it were nothing. "It runs 3 minutes fast," Walter said. "Don't fix it. I like being early." Eli kept it in the inside pocket of the gray coat, over his heart, and wound it every night. The third was a letter. The letter came last. Walter had been slower that winter, grayer, falling asleep mid-sentence over the board. One afternoon he was not at the chair by the window. He was at the small desk in the corner, writing, and he sealed an envelope and held it out without looking up. "Don't open this now," he said. "You'll know when. You'll think you don't, and then something will happen, and you'll know." He pressed it into the boy's hand the way he'd pressed the key. "Promise me you'll keep it on you." "Why?" "Because the day you need it," Walter said, "will not be a day you have time to go home and look for it." Eli put the letter in the inside pocket of the gray coat beside the watch, and he kept his promise, and for 4 months he did not open it. Walter Hollis died in February, in his sleep, in the chair by the window, with the chessboard set up for a game that would not be played. Eli found him at 4 o'clock when he came up the back stairs and knocked twice, and there was no "It's open." He sat with the old man a long time before he told anyone. He made the tea. He pulled it at the right moment, the way he'd been taught, and he set the cup on the window-sill beside the cold board, and only then did he go downstairs to find Miss Della. There was no service that anyone came to. The city did not notice. The boy was the only one who grieved, and he grieved the way he did everything, without taking up space, and the letter stayed in his coat unopened because the day Walter promised had not yet come. It came 3 weeks later with a notice taped to the front door of the Hollis building. Garrison Whitlock had been waiting for Walter Hollis to die for 11 years. He had made his offers, generous, he called them, insulting, Walter called them, and been turned away, and he had done what men like him do, which is wait, and lobby, and let a building age into a liability so that when the owner finally died, the thing could be had not from the man, but from the machinery. The back taxes, the code violations, the assessor's quiet reclassification, the recorder's office that somehow had no clean chain of title on file, the development authority that had already, on paper, rezoned the parcel for a tower with Whitlock's name on it. Whitlock Place, 40 stories. Coming soon to the corner of Vance and 3rd, Eli met him once. Whitlock came up to the 9th floor on a Thursday in the fall before Walter died, in a coat that probably cost more than the county paid Miss Della in a season, and he found a foster boy in a chair across a chessboard from the old man, and did not bother to lower his voice or his contempt for either of them. "Mr. Hollis," he said, looking around the small apartment the way you look at something you intend to demolish, "you can't keep living like this. Look at it. One old man rattling around 9 empty floors above a—" he glanced at Eli without interest. "A county flophouse. It's a waste. It's frankly a little sad. I'm offering you a way to be comfortable for whatever time you've got. Take the number. Spare yourself." Walter did not look up from the board. "It's your move, Eli," he said. "Mr. Hollis—" "I heard you the first 11 years," Walter said, still to the board. "There's tea in the pot if you want it. The boy made it. It's better than anything you've ever paid for." He moved a piece. "Then I'd like you to use the side door on your way out. You haven't earned the front." Whitlock's smile did not move, but something behind it did, and Eli, who could read a room from the corners, saw the thing in the man that the good suit was built to hide, which was that Garrison Whitlock did not want the building because he needed it. He wanted it because it had told him no, and men who cannot stand to be told no by a thing will wait a very long time for the thing to be unable to answer. Walter knew it too. After the door closed, he said quietly, to no one, "That one will come back the day I'm cold." Then to Eli, "Your move. You're letting him rattle you and he isn't even in the room. Don't ever play another man's game on your own board." The story Whitlock's lawyers told the county was simple and almost true. The Hollis building was owned by an old man who had died with no will anyone could find, no living relatives, and a tax bill in arrears. Under those circumstances, the property would escheat, revert to the county, and the county, eager for the development and the jobs and the campaign season ribbon-cutting, would convey it to Whitlock Development for a number that looked large in a press release and was small against 40 stories. And Marigold House, the home on the ground floor, the 8 children, and Miss Della would be relocated. Relocated is a clean word. What it meant was that the home would close, the county contract would be reassigned to a facility 11 miles out by the interstate. The placements would be split because the new facility had only 4 beds, and the children who had finally found a table where a plate would be put in front of them without a word would be scattered to wherever there was room. That is what the hearing on the second Tuesday in March was for. A disposition hearing, a formality. Judge Vance would confirm the escheat, approve the conveyance, and sign the relocation order, and it would take 20 minutes, and he had a tea time. The notice on the door is how the children found out. Miss Della read it twice and put her hand flat against the iron door and stood there a moment. Then she gathered them in the long room and told them, plainly, because she did not lie to them, that the building was being taken and the home might close and she was going to fight it, but she did not know if fighting would be enough. She did not cry in front of them. She cried later in the kitchen, and Eli heard her through the wall and did not know what to do about it. The youngest was a girl named Nora. She was 6. She had been at Marigold House for 10 months, which was the longest she had ever been anywhere, and she had a stuffed rabbit named Pip with one ear chewed soft and one eye replaced by a button that did not match, and she had attached herself to Eli the way small frightened things attach to the quietest, safest body in the room. She slept better when Eli read to her. She held his sleeve in crowds. When Miss Della finished speaking that night, Nora found Eli in the hall and took his sleeve in her fist and looked up at him and said, "Are they going to make us go to different places?" And Eli, who had been to 5 placements, who knew exactly what it was to be made to go to a different place, knelt down so his eyes were level with hers and could not make himself lie. "I'm going to try to stop it," he said. How? He did not know how. He was 16. He was a ward of the state in a borrowed coat. That night, alone in the bunk room after the others slept, he took the letter from the inside pocket of the gray coat. 4 months it had ridden over his heart, beside the watch, unopened. "You'll know when," Walter had said. "Something will happen, and you'll know." Eli broke the seal. If you believe that kindness is never wasted, that an old man's quiet hour with a quiet boy could matter more than anyone in that courthouse would ever guess, type "We honor Walter Hollis" in the comments. Because what was inside that letter is the reason a foster kid walked into courtroom 4B alone and refused to sit down. What was inside the letter is the next part of the story. But to understand the letter, you have to understand what Margaret Shaw had been doing for 4 months while the city assumed the Hollis building belonged to no one. Margaret Shaw had been Walter Hollis's attorney for 31 years. She was the only person besides Eli that Walter had let close, and even she had been kept at the distance of business. She drew his documents. She held his trust. And she had been the whole time quietly furious at a city that treated a living man as a dead estate and a careful old recluse as a derelict, because there was a will. There was, more precisely, a trust, a revocable living trust, executed and amended and notarized and, critically, recorded, into which Walter Hollis had placed the Hollis building and everything else he owned years before he died. A property held in a properly funded trust does not pass through the probate court. It does not escheat to the county for want of heirs. It does not become available to a developer because no relative comes forward. It belongs to the trust, and the trust belongs to its beneficiary, and the only person with the authority to administer it is the trustee. The trustee was Margaret Shaw. She had filed the documents. She had recorded the trust. She had, in fact, written 3 letters to the county recorder and 2 to the development authority informing them, on the record, that the Hollis building was held in trust and was not, and could not be, ownerless. The letters had been received, stamped, and buried, because a buried letter is convenient when a man has a tower he wants to build and a judge he golfs with. So when Margaret Shaw learned, late, because they had set the hearing fast and noticed it badly, on purpose, that the county was moving to confirm an escheat on a property she held clear title to in trust, she was not surprised. She was practiced. She knew exactly what she was walking into and exactly what she carried in the leather case, and she had spent the night before reviewing the recorded instruments one more time the way a surgeon checks her instruments, because she did not intend to be wrong about a single comma. And she knew the name of the beneficiary. She had known it for a year since the last amendment, the one Walter made after he met a certain boy and changed everything. She had never met Eli, but she had read in Walter's own hand, in the amendment and in the long private letter he attached to it, exactly who the boy was and exactly what the old man wanted done. She knew that the building was to pass in trust to a 16-year-old foster child named Eli Mercer, with Margaret Shaw as trustee until he came of age. She knew that Walter had written, in the margin, in the cramped hand of a man writing something he could barely say out loud, "He fixed my tea every day for 2 years and never once asked me for anything. He is the only person who came up the stairs. Give him the building. Let him decide what to do with the people in it. He'll know." What Margaret Shaw did not know until she pushed open the heavy oak door of courtroom 4B at 14 minutes past 10 on a rainy Tuesday in March was that the boy was already there, that he had walked into the hearing alone, that he had, against the advice of a caseworker and the laughter of a judge, stood up, that the only objection on the docket, a minor, a ward of the state, wearing somebody else's coat, was Eli Mercer, owner of the building, defending the home of the children inside it, with nothing in his pocket but a watch that ran 3 minutes fast and a letter from a dead man telling him he'd know when. The day had come. And he had known. That morning he had been up before the others. He pressed the gray coat as best he could with a borrowed iron and a damp towel, and he cleaned his shoes in the bathroom with a wet cloth and a corner of newspaper, because the caseworker, Ms. Reyes, had told him the judge would look at his shoes. She had also told him gently, in the car on the way over, that he should not get his hopes up, that these hearings were usually decided before anyone walked in, that the most he could do was make a record, that a 16-year-old objecting to a county petition was, in her experience, a formality nobody upstairs would take seriously. She was not being cruel. She was being kind in the way the system teaches its kindest people to be kind, which is to lower a child's expectations before the world can. "I just have to tell them his name was Walter," Eli said, looking out the rain-streaked window. "They have the file, honey," Ms. Reyes said. "They know it was Walter." "No," Eli said. "They have a name on a paper. That's not knowing it." He had the letter over his heart and the watch beside it and the brass key on the thong under his shirt, and he did not explain himself further, because explaining was a thing loud men did, and he had learned a long time ago to let the truth do its own work in its own time. Miss Reyes glanced at him and decided, the way adults so often decided about Eli, that he was a quiet boy who didn't fully understand what he was walking into. She had it exactly backward. He was the only one who did. So he came in the front door, the iron one. He lifted it on the hinge and put his shoulder to it, the way Walter taught him, while everyone else used the side. He took the elevator to the 4th floor. He gave his name to the clerk, and he sat down at the long table to wait for a judge to decide the fate of the only home he'd ever wanted to keep. That is where the cold open found him. That is the boy in the borrowed coat. Now let's go back into the room. Let's let the clock run. It is 10:14. We have 8 minutes. Act 4. 8 minutes. "Your Honor," Margaret Shaw says again, "I think there has been a very serious misunderstanding about who owns this building." Judge Vance does not stop smiling right away. The smile is a slow thing to die. "And you are?" "Margaret Shaw. Shaw and Bell. I'm counsel for and sole trustee of the Walter J. Hollis Revocable Living Trust." She walks to the bench, unhurried, that same flooded fence post calm the boy has, and the room will notice later how alike they move, and she sets a single document on the clerk's desk. Counsel for the county has represented to this court that the property at the corner of Vance and 3rd is owned by a decedent's estate with no heirs of record and is therefore subject to a sheet. That representation is false. The property is not held by an estate. It is held by a trust. It has been held by that trust, of record, for the better part of a decade. She nods at the paper. That is the recorded trust certification. The recording stamp is from the office of the county recorder. You'll note the date. Whitlock's lawyer is on his feet. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Counsel can't simply walk in." "She can if she's the record owner's trustee," says the clerk quietly, who has been turning the document over. "And, Your Honor, this recording stamp is genuine. It's our stamp." The smile is gone now. "The county," Margaret Shaw continues in the same even voice, "was informed of this trust 3 times in writing by me before today." She lays down 3 more pages. "Those are my letters to the recorder and to the Development Authority, with their date stamps confirming receipt. The county did not act on them. I'll let the court draw its own conclusion about why a clear chain of title became, in the county's telling, an estate with no owner, on the very day a Development Authority happened to need it to be one. The room has gone very still, the kind of still that comes after a slap, not before it. Garrison Whitlock has stopped smiling too. He has put down his folder. He is looking at Margaret Shaw the way a man looks at a wave he has just understood is bigger than he thought. "Counsel," Judge Vance says, and his voice has changed registers, dropped the theater, found the floor. Even if there is a trust, and I'll examine your documents, a trust has a beneficiary. Property held in trust for a beneficiary still passes to that beneficiary on terms. Who is the beneficiary of the Hollis Trust? This is the question. Margaret Shaw has been walking toward it for 4 months. She turns. Not to the bench. She turns, in the silent room, to the long table on the left, where a 16-year-old in a gray coat 2 sizes too large is standing very straight with his hands at his sides. The sole beneficiary of the Walter J. Hollis Revocable Living Trust, she says, is a minor, for whom I serve as trustee until his majority. A breath. His name is Eli Mercer. The clock reads 10:19. For a moment, nobody understands. And then everybody does, all at once, the way a whole room of people turn their heads toward the same sound. They look at the boy. They look at the boy the judge called a foster kid who imagines he has a claim on a 9-story building. They look at the boy in the borrowed coat, the ward of the state, the one the whole gallery laughed at 4 minutes ago. And the boy does not gloat, and he does not smile, and he does not say, "I told you." He stands exactly as he stood when they were laughing, because he learned a long time ago to take up no space, and the only thing different now is that everyone in the room has finally noticed he is there. That's... Whitlock's lawyer's voice cracks. Your Honor, that can't be right. He's a child. He's in foster care. How would a foster child be? Because the owner wanted it that way. Margaret Shaw's voice does not rise. It does not need to. Walter Hollis was not a man without heirs. He was a man who chose his heir. He chose the only person in this city who climbed 9 flights of stairs to sit with him. She turns back to the bench and lays the last document on the clerk's desk, the amendment, Walter's signature on it, and beside it she sets the certified deed, and her hand rests on the 2 pages the way her hand had rested a few minutes earlier on the boy's shoulder. The building this court is sitting in, Your Honor, the 4th floor you are renting from the trust at a rate that has not changed in 19 years because the owner never raised it on a children's home. This room, these walls, she does not look up. They belong to that boy, and you have spent the morning laughing at him in his own house. Silence. Then the clerk, in the small, clear voice of a person who has just understood something, looks up from the deed at the wall above the judge's head, at the 4 letters carved into the marble by a stone cutter 60 years dead. It's even on the cornerstone, she says. It says Hollis. It's been up there the whole time. Every head in the room tilts up. Judge Harlan Vance, last of all, turns in his leather chair and looks over his own shoulder at the name he has sat beneath for 9 years and never once read, and something happens to his face that the boy will remember for the rest of his life. It is not anger. It is the look of a man who has stepped off a stair he thought was the bottom one. The clock reads 10:21. In the gallery, the room has begun to do the arithmetic the judge just finished. There is a woman in the 2nd row, a court reporter from the local paper who came expecting 20 minutes of zoning and a free morning, and she has stopped typing and is simply staring at the boy with her pen against her lip. There is the bailiff by the door, who an hour ago would have removed Eli without a thought if the judge had so much as nodded, and who is now standing a degree straighter, as men do when they realize they have been guarding the wrong person. And there is the part of the gallery that laughed, the clerks and the idlers and the lawyers waiting on later matters, who laughed because the judge gave them leave to, and who now cannot look at the boy and cannot look at each other, and who have discovered the particular cold feeling of having been on the wrong side of a thing in public, which is a feeling that teaches more than any sermon. Nobody laughs now. The room has the specific airless quality of a place where a great many people are revising, all at once and silently, what they thought they knew when they walked in. What happens next, the master storytellers will tell you, is never one explosion. It is a sequence of small collapses, each one quieter and worse than the last. The first collapse is the county's. The assistant county attorney, a young woman who clearly did not write the brief she was handed this morning, stands and says, with the careful enunciation of someone trying to get off a sinking thing without being seen to run, that, in light of the recorded trust, the county withdraws its petition for a sheet and would request a continuance to, quote, review the chain of title. Granted, says Judge Vance in a voice gone gray. The second collapse is Whitlock's lawyer, who tries, because it is his job to try, to argue that the conveyance to Whitlock Development is already in motion, that there are contracts, that there are reliance interests. Margaret Shaw lets him finish. Then she says, mildly, that one cannot convey what one does not own, that the Development Authority's rezoning was predicated on a county title that never existed, and that she has, in the case at her feet, a draft complaint naming the county, the authority, and Whitlock Development for a coordinated attempt to deprive a minor of his property, which she had hoped not to file, but is fully prepared to. She says it the way Walter taught the boy to set a pawn on the back rank, quietly, as a fact. The lawyer sits down. The third collapse is Garrison Whitlock's, and it is the smallest and the most complete. He does not shout. Men like him do not shout when the floor goes. They calculate. He looks at the deed, and at the trustee, and at the cornerstone, and at the boy, and you can watch him do the arithmetic of 11 years. The offers, the waiting, the buried letters, the tower with his name on it, and arrive at 0. He buttons his suit jacket, he picks up his folder, and in the act of leaving, he makes the only mistake left available to him. He stops at the long table on his way out, and he looks down at the boy, and he says, "Lo, so only the front row's here. You don't even understand what you're holding. You'll lose it inside a year. Kids like you always do." And Eli Mercer, 16 years old, in a coat 2 sizes too large, looks up at the richest man he has ever stood beside and says the longest sentence he has said all morning. "Everyone watches the Queen," he says. "Walter told me that. The game's won by the piece nobody's watching." Whitlock does not answer. There is no answer. He walks out the back, through the side door, the way everyone but the boy always does, and the iron front door, he never learned to open, stays shut behind him. The fourth collapse is the judge's, and it is the one the boy came for, though he did not know it. Judge Harlan Vance sits a long moment beneath the carved name. The theater is gone from him entirely. He takes off his reading glasses and sets them down with a small click that the silent room can hear. When he speaks to the boy, and for the first time all morning he uses no word at all in front of the name. "Mr. Mercer," he says. The boy says nothing. He waits. He is good at waiting. "This court," the judge says slowly, "owes you an apology. I owe you an apology. I looked at you this morning, and I made a judgment about who you were based on your coat and your circumstances, and the table you were sitting at, and I was—" He stops and starts again, because a careful man will not let himself off easy. "I was wrong in every particular. It is possible for a man on a bench to be wrong. You were the only person in this room who was telling the truth, and I laughed at you for it." He looks briefly at the gallery that laughed with him, and the gallery cannot meet his eyes, and he turns back to the boy. "You should never judge a child by his coat. I have sat under that name for 9 years and never read it. You knew the man whose name it is. I think that tells the whole story of which of us belonged in this room." He picks up his gavel and looks at it as though he is not sure he has the right to use it. "The county's petition is withdrawn," he says. "The relocation order is denied. There will be no escheat, no conveyance, and no demolition. The property at Vance and Third remains, as it has always remained, the property of the Hollis Trust and its beneficiary." A pause. "And Marigold House stays exactly where it is." The clock on the east wall reads 10:22. 8 minutes. In the gallery, 2 rows back, the caseworker who had mouthed "say something" is crying without trying to hide it. Miss Della, who slipped in at the back somewhere around the word trustee, has both hands pressed to her mouth. And the boy who has not moved, who did not gloat, whose power this whole time has been in his stillness, the boy finally lets out a breath, and his hand goes up to his chest, to the inside pocket of the gray coat, where a gold watch that runs 3 minutes fast is keeping time over his heart, beside an open letter from a dead man who told him he would know when. He knew when. But the story isn't the 8 minutes. It was never the 8 minutes. The story is what the boy did after the room emptied out, when the powerful people were gone and there was nobody left to perform for, and a man's whole life came down to what a quiet boy chose to do with it. That's where we're going now. Stay with me. Act 5. Third door. The rain has stopped by the time the courtroom empties. It does not break into sun, the way it does in the kind of stories that lie to you. It just stops, and the gray lifts a little, and through the tall windows of the 4th floor, the wet city begins to shine in the ordinary way a city shines after rain, and that is enough. Margaret Shaw packs her case slowly. She is in no hurry now. When she is done, she comes to the long table and stands across from the boy. And for the first time, the two of them are simply a woman and a child in a quiet room, with no judge to perform for. "You're Eli," she says. "Yes, ma'am." "He wrote about you, in the trust, in the margin." She studies him. "I've represented Walter Hollis for 31 years, and I never heard him talk about a single living soul. And then a year ago he comes into my office and changes everything, and tells me there's a boy who fixes his tea." Her voice catches just slightly on the edge of something she will not let herself fall into in front of a child. "I thought he'd gone soft. I'm sorry I thought that. He hadn't gone soft. He'd just finally found someone worth it." Eli reaches into the inside pocket of the gray coat. He takes out the letter, broken seal, soft now from 4 months over his heart, and he does not show it to her, but he holds it, the way you hold a thing when you are deciding whether to say what's in it out loud. "He told me to keep it on me," Eli says. "He said the day I needed it wouldn't be a day I had time to go home and look for it." He turns the envelope in his hands. "I thought it was going to be instructions, lawyers or money or, I don't know, what to do." "What was it?" Eli is quiet a moment. Then he reads it to her, because he has it by heart now, the way you have by heart the few things in your life that ever told you the truth. "Eli," the letter says, "if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and somebody is trying to take the building, because the day I die, that's the first thing somebody will try. They'll say I had no one. Let them say it. They were never paying attention. You are my someone. I'm giving you the building, all 9 floors of it, the home on the ground and the empty ones above. Margaret will handle the law of it. You only have to do one thing, and it's the thing I never could, which is decide that the people in it matter more than the price of it. Keep the home open. Keep Della. Keep the children. Don't ever sell the corner of Vance and 3rd to a man in a good suit who tells you what it's worth. He doesn't know what it's worth. You do. You're the pawn on the back rank now, son. The whole board belongs to you. W. There is a silence after that, the good kind, the kind that doesn't need filling. "Son," Margaret Shaw says softly. "He never called anyone son." "He called me that twice," Eli says. "Once in the letter, and once when he stops. He puts the letter back in his coat. He had a boy, a long time ago. He never said much about it." "No," she says. "He wouldn't have." She is quiet a moment, and then she does the thing a good trustee does, which is to lay the future out plainly, so a child is not surprised by it later. "You should understand what this means," she says. "Not the law of it. I'll carry the law of it until you're 18. That's my job. I mean the size of it. People are going to find out about you now. The paper had a reporter in that room. By the weekend, there will be men in good suits who want to be your friend, and men in good suits who want to manage your money. And they will all tell you they have your best interests at heart, and most of them will be lying, and they will be very, very good at it. She looks at him steadily. Walter knew that would happen. It's the whole reason he hid for 30 years. So I'm going to ask you a hard question, and I want you to answer it the way you'd answer him. What do you want to do with it? With all of it? The 9 floors? You could sell it tomorrow to someone other than Whitlock and never want for anything again. Eli thinks about it. He does not rush. Nobody is timing him. There are 8 kids downstairs, he says finally, and a woman who put a plate in front of me without asking me a single question on the first night, when I'd have lied to her about anything she did ask. He turns the cold envelope once more in his hands. The empty floors. Walter said the empty ones above. He wanted me to do something with them. He looks up. How many beds could the whole building hold, if it wasn't empty, if it was all of it? A home. Margaret Shaw is a woman who has spent 31 years keeping her composure in rooms full of people who had lost theirs, and she has to look down at her case for a moment before she can answer him. A great many, she says. We could find out. Then that's what I want to do with it, Eli says. I want to find out. And that, more than the deed, more than the 8 minutes, more than the carved name on the wall, is the moment Walter Hollis won the game he set up a year before he died, with a single move nobody at the table saw coming. Downstairs, Marigold House does not know yet, the way the people closest to a thing are always the last to be told. So Eli is the one who tells them. He goes down the back stairs and along the hall and into the long room, and Miss Della is already there with her hands still not quite steady, and the children are around the table the way they always are at the end of a school day, and Nora is in the chair nearest the door, with Pip the one-eared rabbit clutched against her chest because she has been frightened all day and could not say why. We're not going anywhere, Eli says. He says it the way Walter said everything, quietly, as a fact. Nora looks up at him. Not different places? Not different places. He crouches down so his eyes are level with hers, the way he did the night this all started, only this time he is not afraid of the lie because there is no lie. Nobody's taking the building. He looks at Miss Della and at the room and at the 8 children who have each been taken somewhere different too many times in their short lives, and he decides not to say it's mine, because that is the kind of thing a man in a good suit would say, and Walter would not have said it. It's ours, he says. It's staying ours. Nora considers this with the seriousness of the very young. Then she climbs down from the chair and crosses the room and puts the one-eared rabbit into Eli's hands. Pip was scared, she explains. Earl. He can stay with you tonight. So he knows. And Eli, who has learned to take up no space, who has spent his whole life keeping the things that matter where no one can take them, takes the soft, chewed rabbit in his 2 hands and holds it as carefully as he held the watch and the letter and the brass key, and he says, "Okay. Tell him it's over. Tell him we're staying." That evening, after the children are in bed and the home is quiet, and Miss Della has gone home red-eyed and lighter than she has been in months, Eli climbs the back stairs of the Hollis building one more time, up 9 floors, past the empty apartments, to the only door he has ever knocked on twice. It is dark inside now, and cold, and the chessboard still sits by the window where it sat the day Walter died, set up for a game that was never played. Eli does not turn on the light. He crosses the room the way he could cross it blind, and he fills the kettle, and he waits for it to boil with the gold watch open in his palm, ticking 3 minutes fast, and when the water is ready, he makes 2 cups of tea. He pulls the bags at the right moment. Trusts his hand. Walter would not have been able to find a single fault. He sets 1 cup on the windowsill, beside the cold board, where he set it the day he found the old man, and he takes the other to the chair across from Walter's empty one, and he sits, And he looks out over the wet city 9 stories down, the whole dark glittering corner of Vance and Third, every floor of it his now and none of it for sale, and he does not feel like a boy who owns a building. He feels like a boy who finally got to keep something. Somewhere below, the iron front door is locked for the night. The side door everyone else uses is locked too, but Eli has the key on the leather thong around his neck, the heavy brass one, and tomorrow, and every day after it, he will come in the front. He'll lift it on the hinge and put his shoulder to it, the way he was taught, because he is not everybody else, and an old man on the 9th floor knew that about him before anyone else in the world bothered to look. The tea goes cold on the windowsill. Outside, the rain holds off, and the clock on the courthouse wall 4 floors down keeps the wrong time by exactly 3 minutes, the way its owner liked it, and a 16-year-old in a coat 2 sizes too large sits in the warmest room he has ever known and keeps an old man company a little while longer. The quietest person in the room is so often the one carrying the most. The world will look at his coat and decide it already knows him, and the world will be wrong, the way the world is so often wrong about the people it has stopped looking at. Walter Hollis spent 40 years learning that. A foster boy learned it in 8 minutes, and the only thing either of them ever had to do to prove it was wait and stay still and trust their hand. If this story reminded you that no one should ever be measured by the coat they're wearing, that the people the world overlooks are so often the ones holding the deed to everything, hit subscribe and stay with me. Every week I bring you another story about the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones nobody bothered to look at twice until the moment the whole room had to. Those are the stories that should never be forgotten. Comment below. Would you have stood up the way Eli did when the whole room was laughing? Tell me. I read every one. And wherever you're watching from tonight, come in the front door. Walter would have wanted you to.